Blind Nil Audio.
I'm Alex L.
I'm Libby Delana. Welcome
to This Morning Walk podcast.
Hi, Kathy Bailey.
Hi, Libby.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're here. I hope I see you sometime soon in the next week. Before we got on the podcast recording, we were talking about potentially meeting for a road trip on a whim next week. So I hope that happens.
I hope so. That would be a dream. And yeah, this time of year to be able to get out and road trip would be
amazing.
inspiring.
Well, you know what I did yesterday in preparation is I went to our local little sort of national park office, and Kathy, I bought my senior pass.
Excellent.
And you, 62 years old, you can buy a senior pass that is $80, and then you have it for a lifetime, and you get into all the national parks for free.
Oh my God, that is just so exciting. I'm dreaming. It's not far off for me.
I know, isn't that? I mean, there's a lot to look forward to in your 60s, including this senior pass. And my understanding is the person at the booth basically said, you know, when you get to the park, you get to sort of get to the front of the line, which doesn't feel right, but I may do it.
There's a long line. Yeah.
Might consider it.
Yeah, you've got the wisdom now.
Exactly. Well, thank you for joining us on this morning walk. Okay, so who's Kathy Bailey and what does she like to do? Introduce yourself to the walk stars.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. Well, I can start with kind of what I do. And at this point in my life, I believe that's not totally who you are, but it's
right.
Part of who you are is what you do. I trained to be an industrial designer, and I am a designer, but I've spent the last 20 years leading the creative side in partnership with my husband of a company called Heath Ceramics. And this company has been around since 1947. So it's it's a different kind of interesting journey, how to make something your own, but also respect the past. And, it's a different kind of design than I never thought I would do. You're kind of designing a company and upholding a legacy and all that. And that's part of what I do. But I think who I am also is I really am deeply inspired by the natural world. And I always have been, but at this point in my life, I'm digging deeper, and if I can't spend time outside, I'm not who I need to be. So that's a big part of what I do. And, camping and hiking and really living outdoors, not in I guess, as a hardcore of a way as a lot of people do, but I have a van and have spent many, many years spending a lot of time outside in nature and just kind of learning about ecosystems and stuff like that. That's my jam these days. And it's inspiring to bring back into kind of culture and design and, this other world of people.
Oh, I love that. And you and I have taken some really beautiful walks together, and I'm sure we will continue to. So actually, walk us through with a little more specificity how you got to Heath. It's such an elegant company. You are an incredible designer. I can imagine actually your naturalist walks probably inspire your creative work at Heath, I can imagine. So say a little bit about that. Walk us through how you arrived at Heath. Tell us a little more about
it's
that.
A good story, and
it is a good story.
It's a nice story. And I feel like when I was younger, I just never liked the word serendipity. It just felt so like sappy. And yet so many things in life, like if you kind of let things fall into place, they lead you into the right way. And it feels serendipitous and how I got here. But I spent my earlier part of my career just after my first job was at Nike designing footwear, which is just so radically different than what I do
Right.
now. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do, and it was a big public company, and there's a lot of creative people and a lot of inspiration there. But for me personally, I just wanted to try working in different kinds of environments. So the next thing I did was just set off on my own to do design consulting, and I did that for a while. And it went well, but also was learning what I didn't want to do as I ended up working for a lot of big companies, and still went like, I want something where I'm not as much of a part of it, but I can steer the bigger thing.
Mm.
And my husband had, we met around that time, and he had a little bit of a similar path in a different way. And I think we both had this like itch of like, um, wanting to be connected to the making of the things we
Mhm.
were designing in a deeper way. And that felt really important. And it was really hard. We're both in the Bay Area where, you don't make things here. You design them here. You engineer them, and then you go elsewhere. And that's just how things worked. But what happened is we moved to Sausalito, just wanted to kind of get closer to nature, but still needed to be, in this kind of professional environment, close to be in the Bay Area, right? So
Mhm.
Sausalito and Marin was just really a dream. So we got here, started exploring the town, and literally stumbled upon this building that's down by the water, that is kind of mid-century looking, and it's in the industrial area, and it had a little sign that said Heath on it, just four letters in tile there. And the building at the time was, it didn't look like it was thriving, but it was open, except for the store wasn't open when we went by, and the entrance isn't like on the main road. So like as far as like being welcoming or kind of like good marketing for a store, had none of that. But anyway, the story is we discovered this. I had heard of Heath. Being I was a bit of a thrifty pottery collector, and even starting in college, just really interested in those objects as design objects and the history behind them. So I had heard of Heath, but like I didn't know that it was here. I didn't know it was still in business, but the name was familiar. Anyway, we dug in, and the company at the time was owned by its founder, Edith Heath. Her husband Brian had passed in 2000. She was 92 at the
Mm.
time. So we kind of pieced together the story. Some of the employees told us the story when the store was open, and we went inside. And I started thinking, I want to help this place. This is a wonderful
Mm.
history. It design wise, Edith was 92. She was just not able to, she was not in her prime, and she needed to kind of like do other things. She also had dementia. So there was nobody there able to really take care of this place. And, um, I think our initial thought was like, bring it into the present day and give it shine the light on it that it needs, but also bring something current into it. Anyway, we asked some questions. It just wasn't really a traditional situation where they were looking to sell it to the highest bidder. The woman who Edith Heath had given control of the business, and it was in a trust at that point. She really wanted somebody who understood what it was and would support its legacy, not purely as a business, but balance out some other things. Robin and my husband, had some conversations with her and just thought, this is it. Let's just make this happen. And literally 3 months later, I was sitting at Edith Heath's desk. Robin was sitting at Brian Heath's desk. And we were like, how do we sell enough plates to keep this place going?
It's such a good story. One of the things you said was, wanting to protect what it was and sort of the soul of the company or the brand. How would you articulate that? I'm not sure. I was just thinking for myself, how would I have articulated? I mean, how interesting. Edith Heath must have been an early female founder. I mean, there's so many attributes to what she did that's so interesting and important. And what were some of those things that you wanted to save and hold and honor and shine the light on?
Yeah, well, it's been such an interesting journey, because there was obvious ones at first, and then
Right.
as the years have gone on, you kind of get deeper into it and learn more. And she also had dementia at that time, and
Mm.
was not really well by the time
Mhm.
we took over. So we didn't have her words, we didn't have her wisdom from her, but we had it in everything she had built. So like
Made.
over
Yeah.
time, like literally, if you go into our office today, we've carefully, it's got a layer of us, but we have not removed what was there. And even, I haven't changed the colors, those were her colors, but anyway, I think the point is what was important is I dug down to like design. I mean, that's what I know well. So look back to what was her original intent here, and kind of thought this is really still valid today. It came from kind of a Bauhaus, very pure materiality perspective. Her design did, the original design. Some of the original designs were still in production. So it was like, keep these things. Some of the things that got layered on over time, to meet different cultural moments, not so relevant today. So it was just kind of like going through, finding like the purity of what the soul was, getting rid of the noise, and from a design perspective. And then over time, I think we learned more about her philosophy. And I mean, I love that stuff. I love looking back at history and going like, we're looking at this through our lens today, and you can't know what everything was back then. And today I feel like it's hard. People were so judgmental of the past and being righteous about knowing
Mm.
everything today. And anyway, there's a lot of things like that about the environmental perspective she had. I mean, they made mistakes, but they had the right philosophy. And we've been able to push that forward in a really important way, I think, today.
Say
Um,
more about that.
yeah.
I don't think I know about her. I mean, I don't, so say more about the environmental impact or
Well,
perspective. Wow.
yeah, so I think this is interesting. It when in the post-war era, um, there's people who kind of live through that, but you also, the like depression and this kind of scarcity era is not that far previously, and it made
Mm.
people have a frugality and appreciation, for like the war era give you an appreciation of being very efficient, and appreciation
Mhm.
of energy and materials and all this stuff, right? So you had a sense of that. You had already like a real connection with those kind of like values, and then put on it, Edith Heath did bring a love of the natural environment and an
Yeah.
appreciation of what the impact could be. But she had this frugality from being Depression era child, and her family like losing the family farm, and and everything. So it was like, it was this different thing, I think, than a typical environmental thing today, where
Right.
we really see the impact. But so, I mean, what am I saying? It's just such a different lens, and yet the values of protecting and what's important, um, uh, as far as having an environmental impact, are essentially the same. And we have different knowledge and different understanding of our resources, and so we're trying to do better. But what Edith Heath did is she tried to design her material, the clay, to fire at a very low temperature, to
Mm.
save energy, and to get better color. And she did this, and no one else did this, no one else has done it. So um, that was kind of remarkable.
It is
To
really remarkable. This is all, you and I have spent quite a bit of time together. I didn't know much of this. So what do you mean by get better color out of it? From the glazes, the low heat?
Yeah, the higher the heat, a lot of time
Yeah.
you'll burn out more of the color. So there's
Oh,
just more
interesting.
possibility when you're able to get at a lower temperature. Yet at a higher temperature, you get a stronger clay
Durability. Okay. Yeah.
durability. But she was able to redesign the clay to kind of get the best of both worlds. and save energy.
What does that even mean, Kathy? Redesign the clay? Does that mean the sort of the chemical makeup of the
No,
clay, the amount of
it means
water, the
it means the chemistry of it. So, it's, and it's not my expertise is the chemistry, but the idea, I can understand and appreciate. So there's all kinds of chemistry happening when you're putting things through this firing at a very high
yeah,
temperature, right? And so you can change the materials to basically like solidify and melt, and
gotcha.
different materials melt at different temperatures and stuff. And it was this thing that she was working with called eutectics, where it's like it's the combination and the chemistry that's happening as these things are coming together that changes the melting temperatures and creates the character of the clay. So she was able to kind of understand the chemistry, worked with some people at some actually, I believe she was part of starting a program for ceramicists at Berkeley, where they were doing this kind of work and trying to understand the chemistry and design these clays. Yeah, so real pioneer, like really like got a philosophy. I'm going to figure this out, and did it. Cool
Isn't that
lady.
fabulous?
Yeah.
I would say, for me, part of the soul of Heath is this beautiful combination of sort of the democratization, small d, the democratization of high design. And that doesn't mean ornate or to me, Heath is insanely elegant in its utility. You mentioned the color palette, which to me is like straight out of, A Beautiful Walk in the Woods. The palette is so beautiful. So to me, there's a couple of really important soulful aspects, and it's this democratization of high design. And what do I mean by that? Meaning that it is a design philosophy that for me is um, beautiful to understand. It's not that it's easy. It's just that I think some of the pieces that you in particular have designed, that Edith designed, have a confidence in their simplicity that makes it very um, I don't know, it makes it very easy to use and to live with, and yet it feels so elevated. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think that what it means to me sometimes is it's not over intellectualized, but it's a
Right.
feel,
Feeling.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the best
Yeah.
design is something that just emits this feeling to you. And I think, Edith Heath achieved that, and I think we're able to kind of keep it up and move it forward. Um, I always find it so interesting that when people describe Heath, people like it is something, this specific pottery connects so deeply with people. And it's like, what, why? When you ask people about their Heath, they'll often hold their hands in a certain way as
Yes.
if they're
Yeah.
holding their bowl, because it connected with them in this like really visceral way. It's very tangible. So it's a design, but it's like yeah, it's a okay, so I think there's a design part, we can get into that, but there's also the memories that you have with that, um, and but it is that initial thing that connected you with it, that gave it that meaning that then years later kind of, um, allows you to still feel so connected to it, and I just love that when you have products that you can do that with, um, it's just really meaningful, and it makes your life a little sweeter. And the democratization of it, I think, was quite important when Heath was formed. The thing that's hard today, I think that's just like really hard conversation, is like we just live in a world that where this is like very, very hard to achieve.
Hmm.
Um, in this kind of world where there's increasing disparity in manufacturing methods allow products that are truly democratized to
Right.
be quite inexpensive, right? So
Right. Good
I
point.
think that's a
Yeah.
struggle, and yet, I mean, this is going on a bit of a tangent from your question, but I think it's leading to this,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
democratization word is really tough, because we can't stay pure to all of our values and
Right.
create a product that really is accessible to the
To
people that we want it to be accessible to.
yes.
So
Right.
what do you do? And you have
Right.
to make choices. And the thing is that we've decided is like the values need to come first. Nobody
Mhm.
else is being enriched in any egregious way by this kind of a system that we have at Heath. It goes back to the employees. We try to pay ourselves fair enough, but we're just trying to give everybody a living wage. There's nothing left over. And that's the price of your plate, right? And it's not super democratic. At the same time, we're not going to pay our people not a living wage,
Right.
and we're not going to take shortcuts that degrade the environment. So that just leaves you like kind of fixed. And it's very hard. Um, it's very hard living in this world where there are a lot of products that are able to make you feel pretty good about some of their values, but if you dig in deep, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's interesting. You're 100% right. I was thinking of more sort of the democratization, not necessarily in terms of price, but of each plate or each item.
Mm.
I was thinking of it in terms of a design sort of
Oh, yeah.
strategy or philosophy, meaning I mean, I think, you have a whole design, a dinner plate and bowls where you even see the materiality at the edge. You see
Yeah.
that, that you see the clay, and there is something about that is very different than, say, a very ornate Venetian teacup or something, right? So, which is a very, very sort of, to me, very well, to me, esoteric design.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, Heath, the design language is with very understandable shapes and proportion and color. And so to me, your design choices, I can imagine, probably feel good to many people because would say it's not super ornate. It's very grounded. It's very
Yeah.
accessible. It's very usable in a lot of different settings. So, but you're 100% right. The decisions you made about the things that are most important to, you know, um, some of the values that that you hold dear mean in many cases as if that the products themselves are not necessarily particularly democratized
Yeah.
and available to everybody. And those values come with a cost. So you're 100% right. Yeah,
Yeah. But I'm with you on the design too. I
right.
think this is really it's really part of it. It's also been quite influential. I think is a nice way to put it. Copied is a different way to
Hmm.
put it
Yes,
because of that, right? It is
right.
very it's a kind of comforting,
Common language,
versatile
accessible.
language,
Yeah,
right? You
friendly.
take
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Edith Heath took off a lot of the decoration when a lot of people I mean, this is 1947 getting into the 50s, the graphical language was so crazy and fun, and she went pure, right? And it
Right.
stood the test of time, had a bit more of it had even a little bit of, I feel like, a Japanese influence, but,
Very humble.
humble, pure. This curves, like if you really get into the curves of the early Heath shapes, they are like the curves, the shape of that your hand can like most
Right.
easily and comfortably embrace, right?
Mhm.
And they're not making a big statement, it's a subtle statement. I always like to compare it to when I was in design school, I loved Eva Zeisel's work and
Mm,
her as a like just but Eva had a way of like, it was a statement, it was an expression, and not as understated. I mean, and it's completely fabulous. But Heath is different, and it does have that kind of really comforting kind of form and shape. It's still elegant, um, but I think it kind of
yeah.
captures a mood.
Well, I think I think the word comfortable is right. I mean, I think of the Heath mugs where that one mug that you love to drink your tea or coffee out
Yeah.
of because it just It makes the tea taste better. It makes the bowl of soup. And to your point, you were describing people describe Heath and putting their hands together as if you're holding, you're,
Yeah.
holding something really precious. That yeah, and I think that's exactly right. I think yeah, I think that because they are so thoughtfully designed and they elicit this kind of sense of comfort, it is what we are drawn to, right? It makes us feel good. And yeah, it is my favorite mug. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
thank you.
easy. Okay, so here's a question to get over to walking in particular. Do you think walking is a creative act? Do you use your walks? I know you walk a lot. Do you use your walks as a creative tool, a problem solving tool? Um, I know because you are, studying sort of this naturalist path, I can imagine that I don't know, are the shapes, the colors, the sounds all showing up in any of your design work? Is that a is Do you find walking a creative act? That's the question.
Yes, good question. I have to think, I mean, let's talk through this because I think for me, it starts as being very foundational for putting me in the right space.
Right. Yep.
As far as like literally what am I pulling from it? I haven't thought about it that much. But to speak about the foundational aspect of it, let's start there because I feel like when you take that walk, when you like ground yourself in the morning and connect yourself, like literally you're connecting with the earth. And, especially if you're able to be in nature, which, well, I've an interesting, do you want to hear the tangent story about
I sure
walking,
do. Yeah, of
which
course.
comes directly
Always.
from your book? So when you did, I first read your book, and I love this format of the book. Right, it's so small. I brought it with me on a trip, right, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this book. And I was traveling in the van. I read the book, and I had this epiphany of like the thing about some of these trips that we go up to Alaska. Or we're going to Utah or something, especially up to Alaska. You've got a lot of days of traveling in the car, and it starts to take on I love this movement of the car travel and the pace and everything, but you have this kind of urgency that starts to happening about getting up
Mm,
and getting on the road and doing the miles.
mm,
And it was always important to me to get the evening kind of get there early enough that I had my evening. I love to cook outside and stuff like that. Anyway, long story. But I read the book and I was like, wait a minute, this is a problem. Like, I need to wake up and I need to get my feet on the ground wherever I am. And I don't even care if I'm in a parking lot. I need to see what's here. I need to move my body and I need to kind of like foundationally get centered. And I started doing that. Like, don't start half an hour later, get up half an hour earlier, whatever it's going to take. And I've
yeah.
done it every day since when we're traveling. And so it was really I mean, I read the book and I was like, wow, I'm not in a place where I'm going to be able to do exactly that, but this is what I need. And it was so good and it's helped me. And then I like did bring it home, but not with the rigor that I have when I'm traveling. It is so important to me to do that. And so I think coming back to, is it a creative act? Like that makes it like got an important element of balance. And then one, but that's where my creativity actually is coming about, where the foundation is being built, is when I'm like out about and I have a different kind of perspective. Because when I'm at home in my normal grind or
Right.
thinking about work in a certain way, I don't have the perspective. I get deep into the details, and I think the real creativity, the real flow, does come in those moments. But I don't think it's for me, it's not the specific idea that kind of
Right.
comes when I
Yep.
bring it home.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's not as if you're out on a walk and you see a beautiful flower in this turmericy, yellowy, goldy color, and you think, oh, actually, that would be an amazing glaze color. It's not that literal. It's what I hear you saying is it's um, get up in especially when you're traveling. And thank you for those kind words. That was very nice. Oh, and by the way, here's my tangent, which is I'm always happy when people read the book and say that the practice that she articulates is not the way. It is not the path. It is not a recommendation. It is an invitation to find your own way of adding walking to your life. So I'm glad that's how you took that. But I think and I find it similarly, which is, as when I get up in the morning, I don't specifically find a creative solution as I walk, but I am only able to be creative if I am in a place where, to use your beautiful language, I'm grounded or centered or not, a zillion places in my head. So is walking a creative act? Yes, it is. It is, for me, it is the essential element before I can begin to create, write, draw, ideate, problem solve.
Yeah.
And I often say to people, don't even listen to what I have to say until I've gone for a walk, because I'll be up here in my head and, I don't know, dreaming or doing something that isn't particularly centered or grounded. And so I think it can be an essential component of being a creative person, or I've found it to be.
I think that's it. It is for me too. And it's like the things that I'm seeing, those colors and the balance, like, I mean, there are times when they do literally
Sure.
translate, but what always comes through is like, what are we trying to do here? When you're
Hmm.
being creative, like, what's the point? And it's, the beauty and the balance that comes through that I get when I'm walking, that I recognize puts the other problems that I'm trying to solve in perspective.
Right.
And that is just like, I just don't know how else you get that.
Yeah, I don't. For me, I don't know either. And so here's a question for you. Why? What has walking shown you? I mean, what is there any one story? Is there any one thing that comes to mind with that question? Has it shown you who you are? Has it shown you how to navigate life? Well, what has walking shown you? And maybe there's a zillion things, but at the moment.
There are a zillion
Yeah,
things.
right.
There's a zillion things. I mean, here's another part of it too. It is the movement of walking that puts you like in your body and like your humanness, that sometimes it's like a weird, I don't think I can articulate it very well, but for me sometimes it's kind of like after like 45 minutes of walking, which I don't always get to take long walks, but when I do, it's after those 45 minutes that I feel kind of like, comfortable in my skin, the way
Yeah,
I'm
kind of
moving.
at home. Yeah.
I feel it's like a little bit of a euphoria and like, um I don't know how else to get it. Like I exercise too, and that gives me something else, and it's not giving me the same thing. I need that too, but I don't get this kind of connecting with myself. Maybe it's also what it gives me is connecting, my body with my head in a
Mm-hmm.
way.
Yeah.
I know people say that from doing like yoga or other things, but I don't. I need to be out like in the with my feet on the dirt or in around, in this environment, moving through,
Mm-hmm.
to connect it all.
Mm.
Gives me a connectedness to like myself and my head too, because my
Yeah.
head's
No,
moving, my brain's
well,
going.
yeah. One of the things I've often felt is, when if you're holding a baby or somebody hands you a baby and you sort of put your feet maybe a foot apart and you start
Mm,
rocking. Do you know what I mean? You just sort of
yeah,
like, I think it's sort of instinctual as you hold this little being, or even if you have a little person on your hip, you just kind of that kind of
yeah, you kind of
sway.
like,
It's the only way I can describe it.
yep.
And to me, I have sometimes, there was one point at which I was holding a little and I started to do that. And it was just this instinctual biological thing. And I almost thought, oh my gosh, that is the movement of walking. It is the movement of this
Love
kind
that.
of rocking, swinging, talk about comfort to link it back to your beautiful pottery. It's sort of, there's something about it that is comforting. You talk about, being connected, your heart and your head. To me, it's like, for me, it feels like being at home when I'm out walking and I have that sort of momentum, and it's not all the time, and it's pouring rain. It's fucking miserable. But, I guess in the best case scenario, it just, yeah, I'll never forget that feeling of holding that little and feeling like, oh my gosh, this is the exact motion of
It's the
walking.
same
And
motion.
yeah,
I
and
love
it's
that. It
loving.
feels so good, yeah. And there's this other, thing, I don't know if this happens to you too, but, when you're doing, like, more challenging, like, you're going uphill, and it is that rhythm that keeps you going,
Yes,
It is just
that's
like
right.
you kinda get into this rhythm, and then you know, you're able to push yourself a little bit, um, not to the point of pain, but to the point of, like, feeling really alive, but
Yeah.
it is that, like, that rhythm that you get from that just feels so, like, important and makes you feel really alive.
Yeah, one could argue it's very human, right? It's in many ways it's what makes us human. So no wonder it feels good, right? It makes us, makes us who we are.
Do you feel I feel it's especially urgent if you've been spending too much time. Well, I don't know what too much time is, but if you do the way we do, you're doing the work, you're in front of a screen, you know, um, don't feel the same urgency if I'm spending a lot of time drawing or something, but it's particularly in front of the screen, like, it's you've got to balance that out.
I do. I certainly respect that, maybe you and I are, such avid walkers. We can't imagine life without it. But to me, I mean, I think that's why for me, my practice is get up and the first thing I do is go for a walk.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of to use, to be grounded, get connected, understand and in many cases, I will think about what's coming up for the day and just begin to socialize them in my body, problem solve a little bit, get comfortable with them. And yes, so I do feel that sense of urgency. And often, right now, I'm in the midst of writing a lot, and I get stuck, and I either need to go for a walk or get in cold water, one or the other.
You write in your head, do your the story, it's the you're yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's got a looseness, right? You're like, it's all like a draft, and it's just
Well, it's play. It feels it again, it's back to that comfort word. It's the nobody's judging, nobody's critiquing, nobody's editing, it's like this big, I sort of hate this language, big whiteboard.
yeah.
You just keep trying out ideas, and if one doesn't stick, fine, you just leave it by the side of the road and you keep on going. I guess that's sort of where I was going with the creative act, which is if we start our walks with something in particular, an intention, a thought, a issue to address, I find it the act of walking generative, and ideas tend to move easily for
Yeah,
me as I
yeah,
walk. Yeah.
100% unstucks. Um,
Right.
unstuck.
It
And
unstucks things.
yeah, I had a really here's a good one. I had a great walk, um, on Sunday and Monday. We went on an overnight backpacking trip, which is like, you know what? I just, I'm just kind of coming off the high from doing that a couple days ago, but it's just like one night sleeping in the woods, just one is enough to, like, it's like equivalent to going on like a great, like, a week, where you're, I don't know, it takes you that much away. But anyway, I went with my husband. And so, so it's a good, it's not like a major thing, maybe like 5, 6 miles in and another out, but a lot of uphill on the way in. And when I'm going uphill, I like to talk or tell a story or like keep my mind going, because it was a bit of a, like, some elevation. Um, and yeah, like, just really got unstuck, like, because I was just like, I'm just going to keep, I don't care if he's listening, I'm just going to keep talking. And
Right.
it was like, but yeah, work through some stuff.
Right. It's like the best therapist ever. I mean,
The best.
just keeps on listening and offering new thoughts. And yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
wouldn't have happened sitting at home in the evening. So,
No,
but man, and also, but you're in the. I mean, this is such a beautiful place out in Point Reyes National Seashore. So you've got this kind of like, I don't know, the perspective that you've got around you. You're like, we're small, and this is
we're
like
small.
the world is great, and we're very small. So like, let's get our problems in perspective.
Well, no, that's so true. I mean, I think in many ways that's really the gift of going for a walk is this sense of perspective, right? To have all these narratives or problems or worries in our head and heart, and we get out in the big world and it just feels like, okay, it's not to minimize what may be challenging or problematic, but we're okay.
Yeah,
Or
we're
the
okay.
it,
And
yeah,
we're
or
small.
ask for help, or yeah, find someone to support you. Okay, so I don't want to take up all your time. Okay, so Kathy Bailey, what are you walking into? What do you? It can be in life, it can be your dreams. What are you walking towards? What are you walking into?
I mean, for me, I'm walking into like another chapter. I feel
Yeah,
like it's like it feels like a really cool time of life to I've done kind of this chapter, especially work wise, but it's also like family wise. My kid is 19, so it's like it's a new chapter. And I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel it's just such a wonderful place to walk into the possibility, the potential, building on what you have done, but just feeling a bit of freedom to be
yeah,
what else, who else am I,
right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I know this is true for you too, just an extraordinary sense of gratitude. Been very lucky to walk these walks, but to now walk into this new spot it's just such a privilege. And
It's such a privilege. It is so, I know, yeah, to be able to kind of take a breath. And it doesn't mean there's not things to work out and problems, but I think it is just like I feel so privileged to be able to have the perspective to put things in perspective, and at this point in my life realize I want to work on some stuff, for myself. I want to creatively continue to, push some boundaries for me, and that feels just super exciting.
mm, I love that. Have a great walk. I hope I see you next week. Thank you for taking the time. You're the best.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Boy, I have my fingers crossed that maybe in, I don't know, it's not 72 hours, but several hours we'll see each other. It'd be so great.
Oh, I can't wait. It would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
See if I can make it happen.
Yeah, let's.
This Morning Walk is a production of Blind Nil Audio, hosted by me, Alex L.
And me, Libby Delana. Produced and edited by Chris Jacobs.
If you find value and meaning in the conversations that Libby and I have, please share the show with a friend and consider leaving a 5-star review. Comments on Apple Podcasts really help us out. When you do that, it introduces this show to a bigger audience. Thank you so much for listening.
You are wonderful. Have a great walk.
The views, information, or opinions expressed in this series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Chip and Joanna Gaines, Blind Nil Audio, nor Magnolia.